afraid of the dark?
I live in an apartment that was built in 1989, and I want to talk about its layout because it's important. It's a fairly standard apartment, but it has an attic, and it feels a bit cramped. I don't really like it. I feel a bit uncomfortable in it. There's a certain sense of vulnerability associated with the attic that I can't quite explain, but by the end of this story, you'll understand why it scares me. It all started with a feeling one night after work. I couldn't shake this feeling, and as soon as I opened the door, the first thing I saw was my attic, and I thought something was watching me from there. At first, I thought it was just fatigue and my imagination playing tricks on me, as it had happened before. But this time was different. On that day, a sense of dread was born, though I didn't know it then. When you lie in bed in the attic, you naturally look down at the entrance leading to the kitchen. So, when I sleep on my side, and before falling asleep, I often feel like someone is watching me from there, from the lower floor. In those moments, I try to read or fall asleep as quickly as possible. I turn off the main light to avoid distractions and use a small night lamp by my pillow to read a book. But one night I was overwhelmed with anxiety. I felt that something was wrong. I heard a noise from downstairs. The light was off. I listened and realized it was someone breathing. My heart started to race. I thought someone was in the house. The air in the room felt heavy and oppressive. The room seemed darker, and I felt strange. I still heard that sound. It was coming from the room below and seemed to be getting closer. There was a blind spot under the attic, but I felt I could pinpoint where the breathing was coming from. Someone was downstairs, leaning against the wall. This thought made me shudder. I pressed my shoulders to my chin and held the blanket tightly. I felt stuck, not knowing what to do, and the feeling that someone was downstairs didn't leave me. After a few moments, the breathing suddenly stopped. I thought it was over and that I had just imagined it all, and I felt relieved. But then I heard a familiar sound that I had heard many times before. It was the sound of footsteps on the stairs leading to the attic. It seemed like someone was coming up to me. I froze in fear and couldn't move again. My mind was filled with fear and anxiety because I could hear someone coming up the stairs. But then I quickly gathered myself and decided to confront whoever was coming up. I was sure I would see someone's head in a few seconds. Those seconds felt like hours. The tension was unbearable. Nothing appeared, and then the sound stopped at the top of the stairs. If someone had been on the stairs, I would have seen them. It seemed that whatever had climbed the stairs was now in the attic with me. I didn't understand what was happening. I was sure there was no one else in the house. And as soon as that thought crossed my mind, my night lamp went out, plunging me into absolute darkness. Then I heard 3 words that shook me to my core. "Who are you?" I don't remember much after that. I must have passed out. In the morning I woke up. I don't know why, but I don't feel the need to find meaning or explanation for this experience. I'm thinking about moving because this might just be the beginning of something, and there's definitely something bad in my apartment. I don't think I can handle it if something happens again. Last year I changed jobs in the fall, marking my 6th job change. Nothing was working out, so I decided to move to a new city. I had less than a month to find a place to live before starting my new job. Although time was limited, I managed to arrange viewings for 5 apartments that met my needs. I was excited to see how they looked in person. I knew it would be challenging, but I had a few options. One of the apartments I planned to view particularly appealed to my wife. She liked the price, size, age of the building, and the neighborhood. We really wanted it. It would be perfect for the new job, just a 5-minute walk from the station, and about a half-hour commute to work. It seemed like the ideal option. We wanted this apartment, but I wanted to see it myself and check out the area. Plus, I had 4 other options to consider. We planned to view the apartment together, but we received unexpected news my wife was pregnant. I said I would go alone so she could share the news with everyone else. I scheduled the viewing of our favorite apartment for the end of the day as the last appointment. The first few apartments didn't impress me. Either there were mistakes in the listing or I was misled. For example, one listing didn't accurately describe the apartment's size, and another claimed the station was a 5-minute walk when it was actually at least 25 minutes. Another apartment felt a bit odd. The photos on the website looked very different from reality. Personally, I felt like the apartment was built in the 1980s. I couldn't understand why people couldn't be honest. It frustrated me and lowered my expectations for the last apartment viewing. By then I was getting nervous because all our hopes were pinned on this last apartment. I couldn't believe I had wasted so much time. Incidentally, the same real estate agent was involved in all cases, and by this time I was starting to dislike him. When we arrived at the last viewing, I almost walked away. I had never encountered such a level of service before. The agent said something like, "Well, I guess you're running out of options, but this last apartment I think will suit you." I didn't like his tone and joking attitude. When we arrived, I noticed that the building's exterior looked newer than in the photos. This real estate agent, it looked clean, and the agent casually mentioned that a cleaner worked in the building weekly. This was much better than I expected. The elevator was modern, the windows seemed sturdy and secure, everything looked good. The hallways were clean and bright, without any clutter, which was a plus because we previously had a neighbor who stored all sorts of junk in the corridor. Even before I entered the apartment, I decided this was exactly what I needed. I had a good feeling. When I finally walked in, I saw that it had been recently renovated. It was bright and clean. I sent a picture of the stove to my wife, knowing she preferred gas stoves over electric ones commonly found in apartments. She loved the look of the kitchen. Then I saw the closets. They were huge. I tried taking some pictures, but most of them didn't turn out well. I had an old phone, and I kept trying to take pictures until it became a bit awkward, and I just gave up. Finally, I saw the balcony, which looked amazing. It was spacious, and I imagined myself sitting there on summer evenings while my wife grew some plants. But when I opened the door to the balcony and stepped out, I felt something strange. A strong chill ran through my body, and then I got goosebumps. It was autumn, but it wasn't cold. In fact, the day was neither sunny nor windy. This feeling was more like fear than a change in temperature. Something felt off. At that moment, I felt a push on my back. If it hadn't been for the balcony railing, I would have fallen from the 5th floor and died. Instinctively, I turned to look at the real estate agent, and I saw that he was on the other side of the room. I knew he knew something, which was why he had shown me all those bad apartments earlier. He wanted me to choose this one. He shouted something like, "Right, buddy," as if I had tripped at the balcony threshold, but we both knew that wasn't the case. I know I didn't trip over anything. I was pushed. I didn't respond. What could I say? A minute or two passed, and I thought maybe I was just imagining things. Should I reject this perfect apartment just because I got goosebumps and maybe tripped over something on the balcony? I decided to leave the apartment as calmly as possible. As I exited, I made eye contact with another resident on the same floor. It was a young woman with a wedding ring on her finger. She looked me in the eye and slowly shook her head. I swear, if I could read minds, I would have heard her say, "Don't go in there." I headed home to tell my wife about my disappointing and creepy experiences. She was upset. She said we were missing out on a great apartment. She was very angry with me for not booking it right away. I kept telling her that something was wrong with that apartment, and that we needed to keep looking. I immediately started searching for new housing, and during my search found a website listing the history of certain properties. I looked up the apartment where I felt the push and found it. It turned out that someone had committed suicide by jumping from that very balcony. I showed this to my wife, and for the first time, she agreed with me that I had done the right thing. I felt like we had avoided something potentially dangerous. And that's how our story with that apartment ended.